Faraway Wanderers, is a priest novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 34. Lady Vixen. When Josishu walked into the bank once more, it wasn't only the shopkeeper who came out to welcome him. Upon hearing of his arrival, a plump, fortunate-looking man strode out to welcome him. This man had thin eyes, and a fleshy nose, his face like a fluffy white bun that had just been taken out of the steamer. It was a pleasing, affable face. Bowing slightly, the shopkeeper very respectfully followed 2 steps behind this man. Once he saw Josishu, he first froze for a moment, before asking, probing, "Are you Lord Joe?" Josishu smiled, saying, "Why, does Pingan no longer recognize me?" This man who had come out to welcome him was Bossong of the Pingan Bank, Sing Pingan. Rumor had it that this man was originally the housekeeper of the Nanning Manor, who came out into the world to start a trading business with some of his savings after his master had passed. Not even a few years had passed, and his business was thriving. His ventures were everywhere across the country. He never stopped shuttling from one place to another, and no one knew where he would be. Many traders knew that this Bossong was shrewd at business, but was a rare sort who was righteous and not cunning. Gradually, with great testimonies and ambition to spare, the Song business prospered. Extremely excited, he ordered the shopkeeper to close up shop, dismissed the assistants, cleaned the place, and invited Josishu to sit, saying this servant was originally near Yangzhou, but I hurried over once I heard the news. Have my subordinates ever given my lord unsatisfactory service? My master has been missing you for a good few years. Right after, Pingan lowered his voice, "Many thanks to Lord Joe, for concealing the news about my master leaving the capital all those years ago, so we can have these few years of peace." Josishu took a sip of tea, smiling, "It's no trouble at all. Is 7th Lord faring well?" Yet he was thinking, trouble only stops when your master dies. If he scrams earlier, everyone can live peacefully. Pingan smiled. "He's very good, thank you, my lord, for keeping him in your thoughts." This servant sent a letter once he had received the news, and only just received the master's reply yesterday. He says that he's coming this way with the shaman, and can probably arrive in about 10 to 14 days. Hearing this, Josishu's calm face spasmed once. He thought, the pugilist world of the Central Plains was in enough chaos, and this troublemaker still wanted to add to it. Truly a year of bad fortune it was, accumulating all sorts of natural disasters and human catastrophes. Yet, he was still courteous in speech as he said, "How could I possibly trouble 7th Lord and the shaman?" Pingan said, "It's nothing. My master has been extremely free with nothing to do after taking up permanent residence at the Shoudhern border, and this is a perfect chance for him to get some exercise. Master has sighed that he still promised my lord all those years ago to find him a beautiful, slender-waisted Nanjiang lady to be his wife." Josishu broke out in a sweat, and said hastily, "I was just kidding." Yet he inexplicably recalled the previous day in the abandoned courtyard, and the serious manner in which Wenbuxing had said, "I want to live out the rest of my life with you." It felt like the chair underneath his ass had grown nails, making him uncomfortable and fell odd all over. Pingan exchanged a few niceties with him, before moving on to the topic proper, saying, "This servant has ordered his subordinates to be on the lookout for news about the lapis armor my lord has come to ask about. They've found some things these past few days. Does my lord know that man called Shen Zhen appeared at Ongding with a Shaolin reverend yesterday, and brought a piece of lapis armor with him. Zhou Zishu was stunned. Shen Zhen, the head of the Shen clan in Shuzhong. Pingan nodded. Yes, this person has stayed away from worldly affairs for long time, to appear so suddenly now, he must have heard of the Zhang family tragedy, and could wait no longer. Zhou Zishu's mind whirled instantaneously, and he reacted immediately, saying, oh yes, back then, the Lu clan of Taixing didn't have an heir and only had those useless little disciples, who were all handed over to Taishan sect leader Hua Fangling. Counting the Zhang family in. Could it be that the legendary 5 pieces of the lapis armor is indeed in the hands of the 5 major clans in the past? Pingan said, masked Joe can truly infer 10 things from one single piece of news. Once Shen Zhen showed up, Gao Cheng also acknowledged the presence of a piece of lapis armor at the Gao family manor, and finally revealed the story behind this object. Have you heard of the Yin-Yang Manual, Fengshan sword technique, and the 6 harmonies cultivation mantra? Zhou Zishu frowned slightly and nodded. I've only heard little about the Yin-Yang Manual. I'm not certain of whether it truly exists or not, but it is said to be a sacred relic of the Healer's Valley, able to revive the dead and grow flesh from white bones, claimed to heal any ailment. Fengshan sword technique was created by Rongxian, the peerless expert who turned to the demonic path 30 years ago. The lower scroll is a sword technique instruction, while the theory inscribed in the upper scroll was what he had inferred and adapted from the 6 harmonies cultivation mantra. Passed down since ancient times, the 6 harmonies cultivation mantra has many parts missing. It's obscure and complex, difficult to understand, and one can very easily undergo chi deviation when practicing it. Regardless, its power is unparalleled, with not one competitor in this world that can surpass it. Does Gao Chong mean that the secret of the lapis armor is the 2-Klassen manual that Rongxian had left behind? Pingan nodded. Indeed. According to Hero Gao, Rongxian experienced a chi deviation due to the grief of losing his wife, but it was due to his improper technique that his demonic nature burgeoned afterwards. After Rongxian died, the few of them found the lapis armor, and saw that the 2 great marvelous techniques and the Healer's Valley Yin-Yang Manual were contained in it. But any Gongfu practitioner could not possibly withstand the life-ruining temptation of either. They felt that this object was too dangerous, and so smashed the lapis armor into pieces, and agreed that each of the 5 clans would keep a fragment, to prevent these demonic techniques from reappearing on the Jianghu. Zhou Zishu frowned upon hearing this. Half a beat later, he slowly nodded, and said, that's what Gao Chong said as well. Pingan said with an apologetic expression, this servant's abilities are truly limited. Zhou Zishu shook his head, smiling, and said, not even Tianchuang and 4 Seasons Manor can know all the details of the true happenings of the tragedy 30 years ago, much less you, a businessman. You've already been a great help. Although, speaking of which, if the 5 major clans each holds a fragment of the lapis armor, where is the Zhao clans? Did Zhao Jing give an explanation for this? Pingan nodded. The head of Zhao clan's lapis armor had been stolen, and its current whereabouts unknown. Once this news was declared, the crowd almost rioted. The Huashan sect leader seemed to have concrete evidence and claimed that Zhao Jing usurped the Zhang family's lapis armor. The man that this servant sent there yesterday said that the Huashan sect leader and hero Zhao nearly came to blows. Zhou Zishu thought of the piece of lapis armor that he had seen in the underground cave that day. It was most likely the missing piece the Zhao clan had lost, and the thief was undoubtedly either one of the 2 who had died that night, Yu Tianjia or Mu Yunj. Unfortunately, like a mantis stalking the cicada unaware of the aureole behind it, a little ghost from the Ghost Valley had taken advantage, and had been stolen by Fang Buzzy, but now Fang Buzzy was dead, suspected to have died by the hand of the delighted morning ghost. Zhou Zishu felt uncomfortable, like a rock had been placed on his heart, bile surging. He thought, could this matter be any more complex? Troubled, he bade Ping'an farewell, and returned to look for Zhang Chenling. Zhou Zishu did not completely trust what Gao Chong had said. In the past, he had to handle massive amounts of information, and those present to the emperor had to be the absolute truth, written of the falsehoods. To examine a piece of information, he usually had to verify in detail the causes and consequences of it, until there were entirely non-faults in the information, before he dared to present it. This was why he was used to doubting anything that he heard while semi-believing it, ready to override any previous information that he knew at any moment. Entering the tavern, he raised his head and immediately glimpsed Wenbuxing and Zhang Chenling with Cao Weiniang and Gu Xiang, and wondered how these four people had managed to convene with one another. Soon afterwards, he noticed that Zhang Chenling and Wenbuxing were occupying a corner of the table, each with exceptionally grave expressions. Unclear on why so, he walked upstairs, about to greet them, right as he heard Cao Weiniang air his opinions. What I'm actually most concerned about is the arson in the backyard of the righteous, Orthodox clan. Everyone's damaging friendly ties for this lapis armor. Have they not heard of the tale of two Lees killing 3 warriors? I only fear that catastrophe befalls the pugilist world because of this, and until then, it'll be a stream of corpses. Very foolishly and naively, Gu Xiang asks stream of what? Cao Weiniang prattled on patiently. By the riverside, I exclaimed, the corpses flow like a river. It describes how the elderly Laozi felt as if his spirit had visited the riverside one night in a dream, and looked down to see the dead flowing downstream with the running water. Extremely melancholic, he was inspired. Eyes wide, Gu Xiang exclaimed, Master Cao Dage knows so much, he even drops literary reference. Zhou Zishu immediately understood why Zhang Chengling's and Wenbuxing's expressions were so solemn. Assuming indifference, he turned on his foot, and headed outside. But he was spotted by the sharp-eyed, loose-lipped Wenbuxing, a person who had to bring others down into the muck with him regardless, who immediately yelled with fervor, Asu, why are you walking out? We've been waiting for you for so long, come over quickly. Zhou Zishu thought this Jinx Valley master when really embodied 8 bloody lifetimes worth of iniquity. Wenbuxing happily pulled a chair out, told Zhou Zishu to sit down, and personally poured wine for him, eagerly attentive as he said, quick, taste this tavern's good wine, the taste is traditional, it's not bad. Expressionless Zhou Zishu attempted to use his gaze to convey his evaluation of him. Wenbuxing looked at him for half a beat, then all of a sudden, said in a coy voice, we're still in public. Seeing this, Gu Xiang covered Zhang Chengling's eyes with a hand and said, with grimace, even a dog's eyes will be blinded. With a red face, Cao Weiniang stammered, me Miss Gu, actually you don't have to envy Zhouxiang and Wenxiang's deep love, you're as beautiful as a flower, there must be, must be someone who secretly admires you. Gu Xiang blinked her wide, innocent eyes at him, asking, really? Where? Cao Weiniang stared at her in a daze. Half a beat later, he asked in a non sequitur, Miss Gu, can I call you A Xiang too? Zhou Zishu lowered his head to drink his wine in great concentration, reminding himself that it was impolite to have seen or heard anything. It was as agonizing as sitting on a carpet of nails, disgusting him until even his tongue was numb. It was the first time in his life where he failed to taste what was in his cup. But at this moment, a person walked in through the door. Upon laying eyes on this person, the raucous tavern quietened down in an instant. This was a woman, who walked in with her gaze fixed on something in particular. Noticing the waiter carrying plates staring at her, completely floored, she smiled slightly, and the plates in the waiter's hand fell and shattered on the floor. She was truly too beautiful. In that instant, most of the people who laid eyes on her came to the unanimous decision that she was the most beautiful woman that they had seen in their lives. Wuxia was agape for a moment, before she tugged at Cao Weining's sleeve, whispering, "Look at her, she isn't a goddess, isn't she?" Yet Cao Weining only glanced once in the direction Wuxia was looking in and rescinded his attention, whispering, "This woman's gaze strays and drifts." The books on physiognomy call this an intoxicating gaze. She absolutely has no good intentions, and cannot compared with cough. His last few words were mumbled very softly, so softly that Wuxia, who was staring transfixed at the beauty, did not notice. But a chuckle escaped Wenbuxing, who mused that Cao Weining was not a quick person himself, and no wonder was so averse to others whose gaze strayed quickly. Even the one he had set his heart on was Wuxia, who was always in a daze. That beauty swept her gaze around the place once, then came upstairs, heading in their direction. She didn't look at anyone else, her gaze locked solely on Zhou's issue, as if her pair of amorous eyes had only space for him. She sauntered over to stand beside him, and bent to say with a flowery breath, "Could I ask you to buy me a drink?" This was Lady Luck fallen from the heavens. Anyone would have been disoriented upon impact. But without even waiting for Zhou's issue to speak, a third-wheeling hand shot out from one side and planted itself between them like a barricade. Wenbuxing stuck into Zhou's issue's robes, fished his coin pouch out in the blink of an eye, and boldly shoved it into his own robes, then said calmly, "Miss, I'm afraid not." End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.